Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Sunday evening GPG podcast. Apologies for some technical issues going live a little later than expected. To be perfectly honest, I made a complete arse of OBS trying to get everyone's cameras in after last week's show. So we're on a new link, so hopefully people can jump into the show. If you wouldn't mind, I know we don't normally do this too often, but if you wouldn't mind sharing out this link, because it is a different link to the one that we had scheduled originally, that would be amazing. And gents, we have managed to do a few shows back to back. I think now 3 or 4 on the bounce now in our new Sunday evening slot. So hopefully the consistency is going to help us out. Hopefully it lets everyone know exactly when we're going to be streaming. But on tonight's show, we do have the 3 regulars, I guess we could call us these days. We've got Luke. How are you doing there, Luke?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, it's weird because I can see you on one stream and on the other I can't see you. Like here, I can't see you.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that, man. I need to figure that out. I'm sure there's some wizardry that the OBS experts use to make it right. But
yeah, no, it's just trippy. It's cool. Keep it that way. No, but I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, and we've had quite a lot of news actually in various forms, some big, some small.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the show.
Yeah, it's been a good week, I think. Especially on the PlayStation side, I think it's fair to say. So we'll hopefully be jumping into a few of those topics tonight, but also helping us navigate through them. We do have our good friend Puxley. Puxley, how are you doing, mate?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm doing very well, thank you. Not to be a bore or anything, but I can't help it on the stream. Now, Luke's and I's video feeds seem to be temperamental. And I hope it's just...
okay. Why is that?
They look like static images, and then they kind of seem to be updating...
sporadically.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they look to be... No, it looks to be our images are frozen, Pucks.
Okay, so it's just...
Scott's is still going.
You know what's weird? Is my video quality like significantly worse than you guys as well?
I don't think mine looks that great at the moment, so I think you look better than me, personally.
Oh, okay. On mine, I seem to look worse. It does. Looking at OBS now, it looks to be good. I'm not seeing any drop frames or anything. Oh Christ, just all kinds of technical issues tonight, gents. I'm very sorry. Obviously, sorry to everyone in chat. Yeah, exactly. Guys who are in chat, please let us know how it looks, how it sounds to you guys. That will be greatly appreciated. Actually, that does remind me, I forgot to put the actual new link in the Discord, so I'll pop that in now. So yeah, not the smoothest start to the show tonight from my perspective. We're very sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, I can see that. You do seem to be moving now, which is the main thing. So, but as Luke mentioned, we've had a pretty busy week, especially on the PlayStation front. And thank you very much, Owl Chronicles, saying that it looks fixed now. Appreciate that. I'll hopefully have got rid of any technical issues for next week's show. I might just have to power through a little bit tonight if any others appear. But yeah, we've had a pretty busy week. We've had PSVR2 news. We've had God of War Ragnarok reviews. We've had Kojima talking about Abandoned, which I found hilarious. We've had a semi-naked man leak footage of a Kojima game, seemingly. We have got some news out of Jason Schreier from Bloomberg around I can't actually remember the name of the Embracer studio. What did they rename the Square Enix Montreal to again? Is it like
Anamo, was it? Anamo?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Being unfortunately shut down very shortly after being acquired by Embracer. But as part of that article, some interesting tidbits, particularly around Eidos Montreal potentially helping out with Fable. So we'll jump into that, and hopefully a few more things depending on what comes up. So But before we jump into any of those topics, I thought it'd be good just to have a little bit of chat about what people have been playing this past week. So, Pux, I'll start with you there, mate. What's been keeping you busy this past week?
Like I said, I've been away again with work, so in the times that I have had, I've actually been jumping into Trials Rising through PS Plus. Big fan of the Trials games. Played them all since the original back on the 360, and I love the difficulty and the torture of them all. And I noticed that it was on PS Plus, and I thought, you know what? I'll give it a go. I never got around to buying it when it first got released, and I've actually been having quite a good time with it. I've got a few niggles with it in terms of how the progression works and stuff like that, but apart from that, I've really been enjoying it. I think that's kind of the main thing I've been playing. I kind of dabble in and out of Fortnite still. I think, as I said to you guys last week, I'm kind of getting quite close to level 100 and completing the battle pass, so I'm kind of just naturally playing in a few stints and doing a few quests and stuff and finishing that, really. So not too eventful. However, I think, as we said before, my PS4 is all kind of nicely updated and ready to go for God of War. Well, I am away on Tuesday, annoyingly, so either Tuesday evening or Wednesday will hopefully be when I start getting myself stuck right into some God of War Ragnarok when that finally comes out. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely. It is Tuesday that it's released as well, Pux.
I believe so.
It's right? Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Oh, it's
well,
Wednesday.
That's an unusual day, isn't it?
Yeah, although obviously it unlocks at midnight.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. So yeah, come Wednesday, I should hopefully be delving right into that. So now I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, you and
still be keeping myself away from spoilers and trailers and anything like that. So
yeah, I think
trying to go in as blind as I can.
You won't be the only one, Pux, I think, who's going to be jumping into Ragnarok on Wednesday, it seems. How has the media blackout been going for you with Ragnarok then? Because we've spoken about it a little bit on the show this past couple of weeks, actually, because the previews came out a couple of weeks ago. So we've touched on it. So have you managed to stick relatively clear of spoilers? I know, unfortunately, that the entire thing's pretty much leaked at this point. So good luck to everyone.
So I don't know whether it's just I just don't follow the right channels or whatever on the Twitter sphere or things like that. But no, I've not had much in spoilers at all. The only things I keep getting up randomly are just links to watching one of the latest gameplay trailers that came out, like what, 2 weeks ago now or something like that. But no, I've actually been pretty spoiler free. And to be fair, I've not felt the urge to click on any like links and stuff. So because I know I want to go in blind, and thankfully the internet has not been a dick to me and thrown it all in my face to try and watch. So
yeah,
it's been pretty easy for me, actually. I have to say.
No, I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, because I think like achievements have come out. You've obviously had the reviews that have come out. We spoke about it last week. I think Cory Barlog came out, and obviously he was discussing about how a retailer had pretty much leaked the game 2 weeks ahead of time. So obviously, yeah, be vigilant out there. Good luck to everyone trying to avoid spoilers. Just a few more days to wait, as Luke says, Wednesday. So you've just got another just a little over 48 hours for those who are going to be jumping in at midnight. So, but Luke, what's been keeping you busy this past week?
Loads of different bits, actually. So Overwatch 2 still, as I'm trying to get my way through the battle pass for that.
Yeah.
Which is fairly slow going, but I'm not too far away now. So that Bayonetta 3 still as well. Haven't had as much time as I would have liked to dedicate to that, but still on the docket, as it were. Played a little bit of God of War, actually.
Okay.
Not much. I'm not doing another playthrough before the next one comes out, but I just wanted to kind of, feel my way back into it a bit again, so I'm a bit fresher. So that's been enjoyable. Plague's Tale, which is great. That's really, really cool. And I think that's about it. A bit of Vampire Survivors, of course.
Yeah.
Just great. I actually saw you on that earlier. So
yeah. I hit level 47 on stage 3, which is the highest I've got so far. I said when Indy was on the show, I'm really digging the garlic build. I think that's the one I'm enjoying
cool.
at the moment. But I actually got my first. I'm not too sure what they call them, but the evolved weapons. I got my evolved whip.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
which it can do crits. It can heal you. It was pretty invaluable when it came in. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Honestly, I could just listen to the music of that game. To be honest, there's something that's really cool and retro about that.
I'll just add as well that like I never heard of this game until you mentioned it like a couple streams ago, Luke, and then ever since then I seem to see it everywhere. And then it was like coming to Game Pass or something. It was just like, what is this game out of nowhere? Just
yeah, it's really great. I really would recommend giving it a go because within about 10 minutes you'll probably be addicted, like most people are. It's just one of those games.
Yeah,
it's just so great to pick up as well. Just if you've got a spare 20 minutes and you can't dedicate it to a story game or something like that.
Yeah.
Just have a couple of games on that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, very much like I treat it kind of like how I did Hades Pucks. It was just if I've got 20-30 minutes, I think the max runtime is 30 minutes if I'm right, isn't it, Luca? I don't think you play any longer than the 30 minutes before having to restart the level. So yeah, you can just jump in, play a bit, and it's even if you don't do an awful lot, as long as you collect some gold, you can use that to kind of power up your next run. It's it's pretty good, and like I say, the music is excellent. It really is. But yeah, it's I think, look, I hadn't heard of it until you mentioned it on the show a couple of weeks back. So I'm gonna have to check this out. But I think it only went 1.0 fairly recently, and when it went 1.0, it came out on Game Pass for PC, and then just this past week it was announced for console as well, and Xbox Game Pass as well as PC Game Pass. That it's already in. So I imagine a lot more people are going to be jumping into that. So. Yeah, looking forward to seeing more people check that out, because when you see it getting the later levels, it just looks bonkers. Like it really just looks absolutely bonkers on your screen, just numbers and colors everywhere. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, anything else, Luke? I know we were chatting in the green room a little bit. Obviously, you've had your first full week gaming on your new beast of a rig. You've had a bit of an upgrade actually this past week. I did see you and Boxenberger talk. I think it was Boxenberger. You've gone for either a TV or a new monitor upgrade as well. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I got a new TV for actually it's my wife's kind of off gaming room, I guess. But we're under the understanding that I'll be in there to do that. Yeah, so I got a new QD OLED, which is just amazing. It's just an OLED but super bright, basically, which is kind of like the weakness of OLED remedied, as it were. So yeah, I've been playing, like not playing, but like putting some stuff on that just to see what it looks like. So God of War was on that, for example. Yeah, it's just awesome. So yeah, I can't wait to play Ragnarok on it. But yeah, no, I've had the rig for a week. It's been absolutely fine so far, as in no issues. And it's just awesome. I mean, the performance on it is just, it's just unbelievable. And DLSS 3 in particular is just crazy. I mean, just the boost in frame rates that you get from that, just enabling it, are unbelievable. To really no discernible visual downgrade or anything. And just the only other thing I was playing as well was Doom Eternal for a bit, because that's a really good kind of game to gauge performance, and id Tech anyway is super well optimized, so you can get high frames or good frames on pretty much anything, but it scales very well. So I think I was getting about 300 frames on that.
Not bad.
Yeah, so that's maxed at native res. So it's just crazy. It's been a good week. Like gaming wise, it's been a good week. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been playing, and then also obviously preloaded Ragnarok, ready to go for Wednesday.
Yeah, I suspect your rather excited for that. Just like Pucks. We'll probably have to touch on that next week actually, and have we'll be talking about Ragnarok like 3 times in 4 weeks. I think we'll no doubt be touching on it. So unfortunately, I'll not have an awful lot to say. I have actually started back up the original on PC, but I've not completed it. And obviously, it's probably a little bit of time before I can check it out on PC. I think they've said it's going to be a minimum of about 12 months before the games come to PC. So maybe this time next year, I'll finally be able to delve into the Ragnarok conversation. So. Yeah, but gents, we've like we said at the beginning, obviously we've had a fair bit of news this past week or so. So where would you guys like to start? Anywhere in particular? No? Shall we start with the PlayStation VR news then? Oh, Luke, Pucks, apologies. You might have said something there, but you're muted at the moment, mate. I can't hear you. Yeah. We'll give Pucks a second to sort out. While Pucks is maybe trying to figure that out, I guess the big news I think was obviously the announcement of the release date and the pricing for PlayStation VR2. I think people have been anticipating this for some time. Look, what was the release date again? February 23rd or something along those lines?
For
PSVR2.
February something. I can't actually remember. February something, and then the pre-orders go live 15th, I want to say, something like that. It might even be sooner than that, of November. Yeah,
I will just double check when that is actually, just to make sure we are given the right information. It's February 22nd. That was a day off. Not too bad. Not too bad at least. And then probably the biggest talking point of the announcements, and I'm curious to get into this with you both, is the pricing. So I think a lot of people have been expecting a fairly high price point for this, especially in the current economic climate, and because of the raw specs of the headset itself. But it came in for us in the UK £530. For our American friends, I believe it was $550. I think it was €600 for those in Europe, which I think, look, probably fair to say, maybe surprisingly a little bit, but it does seem to have caught people off guard. And I think the general consensus following that announcement was, holy shit, this thing is bloody expensive. It's more expensive than a PS5 digital edition. And is it more expensive than the disc version as well? How much does that retail for these days, since they put the price up?
Yeah, I think it might be 500.
Yeah, so it was... Yeah, I think it might actually be a very, very similar price. We've got BMG in the chat there. Thank you very much, BMG. Says pre-orders go live November 15th at 10 a.m. for us in the UK. I mean, regardless though, the thing is, it is pretty expensive, but probably not too surprising for it to hit that price point. But the larger conversation has just been centered around, like, is this thing too expensive? So we'll maybe start there. Pucks, are you still having some audio issues there, mate?
No, I think you should.
There we go. You're back there, mate.
Interrupt your conversation.
No, that's fine, mate. Glad.
Apologies, my Discord decided to put my input and output settings to default, so then it doesn't know what to pick.
Cheers, Discord. Cheers. So, look, where do you stand on the pricing of PSVR2? Because I know we were chatting in our Discord about it, and I think you kind of felt it was actually a good place from a pricing perspective, which I think is not the general consensus I've seen, although obviously there's a couple of different angles for it. So where do you stand on it?
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was going to be about £500 anyway. So in kind of there or thereabouts as to what I expected. And I think the reason I thought that it was going to be around that level, primarily because of the tech involved, because in terms of feature set, it's surpasses pretty much the majority of PC VR consumer products, even ones that are double the price, like the Valve Index, for example, which is £900, £1,000. So by comparison to those things, it's actually very cheap, in the VR space. Now, it's not as cheap as like a Meta Quest 2 or something like that. but it's not a million miles away from those prices. And obviously, again, for the, you're getting more advanced tech now. Obviously, it's not wireless like the Meta Quest is, but it's a really impressive piece of hardware. So I think I was expecting a pretty significant price for that. I think I would have been surprised if it was like £600 or more. I think that would have been really a lot.
Yeah.
It already is a lot. But I think if you look at what you're getting and then also, compare it to the original PSVR, which I think cost about the same by the time you'd actually bought the Move controllers and the camera separately, all of which you needed really to play OG PSVR. So I guess, apples to apples, it's good value, because you've got more tech and more far more advanced piece of hardware and more included, given your controllers are there, completely redesigned, etc. But I totally agree with the sentiment that it's a lot of money in this climate, right? If it come out a couple of years ago, it still would have been very expensive, but I don't think the reaction would have quite been the same as it is now, because people just look at that price and just scoff, given the world, you know what I mean? So I genuinely don't think it's that bad a price for what it is. But the thing is as well that it's not as if it's like a necessary product for your PlayStation, just in the same way that that PC VR isn't, right? It's an add-on. It's something supplementary. Yeah. It's still pretty niche. So, I wasn't surprised. But it is a lot of money, and I think obviously they will not sell tons and tons of this out of the gate anyway. One, because it's a smaller, kind of more enthusiast product, and two, because it's how much it is. So that won't put some people off. It's probably not going to put me off because I really want to experience it. But we'll see how it performs out of the gate. Be interesting to see how many they make and what their kind of forecast for this are, given the price. And obviously as well, you have to have a PlayStation 5 to use it, obviously, but that is still somewhat quite difficult. I mean, it's getting better, but it's like the user base already is quite small because it's only PlayStation 5 owners, and then it kind of gets smaller because it's only a portion of those owners, and maybe some of the people who would really want the product actually can't get the thing you need to run it, which is PlayStation 5. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Pux, did you have PSVR for your PS4? Is VR something that you like to dabble in?
I don't have a PSVR myself, but I did have a family member a number of years ago who did have one, and I remember having a go of that, which was okay. But February this year I got a Quest 2, so I've really been enjoying that. I kind of share a lot of Luke's sentiments there, in that I wasn't expecting this thing to be cheap by any means. So when I did see the price reveal, the natural reaction was to be like, cough bloods, scoff, Jesus Christ, how much? But it does make sense. I wasn't expecting much less, really. And if anything, if you consider the other kind of more, Quest 2 is very good for what it is and for its price point, but it's obviously not a high-end VR headset in comparison to what's out there already. So in terms of really touching that high-end VR market, which is, again, that's the niche bit, which again was what Luke was talking about. So, and when you consider to have a good, to have that fantastic VR experience using like the HTC Vive or, whatever PC-based headsets out there, you need, the rig itself is going to cost you like $1,000 or something plus to have like that peak performance experience with it. You don't need to have equip like a rig that expensive, but to get the most and to get the best VR experience, you need powerful hardware. And then you've got to pay the $1,000 on top of that for the headset itself, and some of them have external cameras and things like that. I know that's kind of being developed away now for the more kind of internal camera-based stuff to kind of sense outwards. But when you consider what the other options are and what this is trying to target, a £500 PS5 and then another £500 for a headset, and a grand total is arguably the cheapest option for that high-end VR experience. And again, it's not targeting for the mass market. It is for those that are that are wanting that niche experience. And no doubt it's going to be very good. And as you say, you know, a lot of people online are almost scoffing at how much it is that it's not consumer friendly, but the tech at the moment isn't consumer friendly anyway. Like, like the technology required to build a VR headset is still arguably in its infancy in terms of getting it to a point where it's ready for mass market and it's cheap enough. It just isn't there yet. It needs to be developed further, and these are arguably the steps to get it there. But when you look at the specs of this thing compared to the competition, and again, the overall cost compared to the competition, it's still the cheapest option out there to get yourself into it. And the hardest thing, a lot of people, a lot of what people don't like about VR is the low quality of the displays, because that's arguably part of the reason why people get nauseous when they play or things like that, among other design reasons within the applications themselves. But equally, like, the lackluster display quality can throw people off. So the fact that the PSVR2's got some of the best high-res displays out there throughout the whole VR market is quite incredible. When you put all that together, I don't think you're getting a bad deal. It's just you need to be prepared to pay for it.
Yeah, I suspect when it comes to the margins, they will be razor thin at best, maybe even taking a small loss. I suspect the price point, I don't know, I would expect it to maybe they're either breaking even on these. Obviously it's just purely speculation, but I think we saw with the you mentioned the Quest Pucks, obviously it wasn't that long ago that Meta upped the pricing on both of their models by $100 a piece to bring them from $300 and $400 to $400 and $500, I believe, and that's obviously a standalone headset, but as you have both kind of touched on, a fairly specs wise, they're not really comparable. Now, look, obviously we've spoken about your new 4090 rig a fair bit over the past couple of weeks, and when Phil Spencer's been talking about VR, he's often said, "Look, we think that is very much something for the PC space." Now, obviously, with you having hardware that will be able to support, I guess, really high level VR, why would it be PSVR2 that you would go for over maybe something in the PC space? Is there a particular reason there?
I think it's a mixture of things. I think I'm more confident, I guess, with PSVR2 that it will have, a lot more dedicated high-end VR game. Obviously, there's a lot of good PC VR stuff, but, when you think about, like, what's really pushing boundaries on PC VR and what's, like, what are the big experiences, AAA experience, it's pretty much something like Half-Life Alyx. That's kind of the biggest litmus test, I guess, of that space. So I'm just a bit more confident buying PSVR2 because I know that, or I'm reasonably confident that Sony will support it till the end of the gen. I think it will have some good stuff on it, and obviously I would hope something like Alyx would come over to it. So I think that's probably the main reason why. Obviously, I've looked at getting the Index before, the Valve Index, but I just decided against it because I was only really going to buy it for Half-Life Alyx. That was the point. And if you're spending £900, £1,000 on a bit of hardware to play one game, I think you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean? So, so I was like, well, actually, I knew at the time PSVR2 was coming, and I just had a feeling that that would be something they'd look to bring over. So, if they brought that over, then there's no real reason for me to get any PC VR stuff, and I'd be more than happy to buy really good value for money, in terms of the PSVR2 headset by comparison to a lot of the PC space headsets. So that's probably the main reason.
Yeah, and I think Puck's touched on it as well, talking about kind of like the different technologies that they can use from a tracking perspective. And the PSVR2 uses the inside-out tracking. I believe the original PSVR uses I can't remember what they're called, the cameras, I believe. Yeah,
just like the PlayStation camera, I think it's called, yeah.
And does the Index use cameras as well? or does that have inside-out tracking? I believe it uses cameras, doesn't it? You can set it like
I think it uses cameras, or it might actually. In fact, no, it might have, because you get the different stations with it. So I think it might have inside-out tracking in respect to that. So
right.
The Index is the latest one, isn't it? Isn't that the one that's like 1,200 quid? Or something
yeah,
ridiculous?
well, yeah. I think it's a Valve Index. It's a Valve Index.
Yeah. Well, you've obviously got the Meta Quest Pro. I believe that was just announced fairly recently. That's a $1,500 headset by itself. That's just the headset now. Obviously, it is a standalone device. And it does have some pretty impressive tech in that as well, in terms of like it's got so many cameras. Each of the controllers has its own CPU and things like that. But I guess that just goes to show that these things aren't cheap. You know, they're not cheap to develop, and at this moment in time, they are for an enthusiast market who are willing maybe to pay a little bit extra for it. What do you think? And this goes to both of you. Feel free just to chip in. What do you think the end game is for PlayStation VR with Sony, or VR in general? Do you guys see it being something that becomes more mainstream? Is it something where maybe in a decade's time, are we all going to be sitting there with VR headsets on our head and working as well as gaming? Or do you think it's going to be something that's going to continue being this more enthusiast niche product? Or will we get to a place where they can sell more units, so they can bring the price down and then sell more units because they've managed at a cheaper price point? What do you see the sort of, I guess, medium to longer term future of VR, and where do you see PSVR sitting within that future?
You want to go first, Luke? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult question, isn't it? Because I guess that's what a lot of executives and a lot of companies are asking themselves, like, where does this, VR as a future, where is it going? I think in our lifetimes, I just think it will coexist alongside, different options for interacting with entertainment, whether that's games or whatever else, right? And I think maybe the end game, many moons from now, many moons from now, is to have VR be so advanced that it becomes the way you interact with games just as standard, right? That's the default. But I mean, not in our lifetime, I don't think. And I think for Sony, I think Sony, I think they're into it for a few reasons. I think one, they like to be seen at the forefront of kind of developing, things in the gaming space. They haven't really done that in terms of true innovation for for quite a while, really, probably since the first few PlayStation consoles. Not to say that the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 weren't great consoles, because they obviously were and are, but they're kind of the status quo in much the same way as the Series X and the 360 were evolutions of really innovative original hardware. But I think they want to be seen as kind of leading that charge for the future. So I think that's one thing. And I think another is that they probably do make a bit of money from this. I guess, it's another source of hardware, which obviously, as you said, initially they'll probably lose money on. But over time, they will turn money on that, and they will probably turn profit just from selling a single game with it. I imagine if, for example, you buy the Horizon Call of the Mountain bundle, which I think is £580 in the UK, which really is the bundle you need to buy to get a game with it, to be able to play something on it. I think they will probably turn a small profit just on that one. I just think they're big fans of it as a technology. I mean, it seems like that, because you wouldn't have wouldn't necessarily have expected them to go all out on hardware and kind of development of a new headset after PSVR, which wasn't a failure, but it's not as if it was this like rip roaring success that fundamentally changed the VR space or anything like that. It was just an additive console experience. And I think for Sony, that's probably one of the big things that they're looking at, which is to say that no other console manufacturer, they have no competition in this space, because Xbox aren't interested at the moment. Nintendo certainly aren't. So they can kind of get that, and it's only a small audience, but it's an audience nonetheless. That kind of small base of consumers that are actually really interested in VR gaming, but they don't want to go through the hassle of doing it on PC. So, where do they go? Well, the only place they can go, they want that PlayStation at the moment. So I think kind of multifaceted, but those are probably some of the reasons they're looking at it and what they're looking to drive.
Yeah, it's interesting. Pux, I'll come back to you in a sec, mate, because I do want to get your thoughts just on VR in general. But you raise an interesting point, Luke, just about I guess Sony's motivations somewhat, and obviously it will be financially motivated. They're a business after all. I've ahead of the show, I was doing some research on the original PSVR. Look at how many units did it sell, what was the attach rate, things like that. And I think the figure that I found, and this may be a little out of date, I'm not too sure Sony have reported a more recent figure since, but I think I saw something about 4.2 million headsets being sold. That article is fairly old, so they might have sold a few more since. Let's say just maybe round up to 5 million, and that was against how many PS4s did they end up selling? About 120 million, I think, in the end. So relatively low attach rate, but obviously I think that's to be expected. It's a niche product. It was expensive. I think we kind of touched on it. It wasn't particularly groundbreaking as a headset either, and that's obviously one of the differences between PSVR2 is it's much more advanced. But when it comes to the financials, when you've got a much smaller, I guess, user base, and you're trying to turn a profit on these games, is that going to be much more difficult? Because you've got maybe a game that needs to sell to a significant portion of that user base in order to I imagine turn a profit, compared to a game that maybe just releases on PS5, which has a much larger user base to sell into. Or would we expect the attach rates of these games like Call of the Mountain, for example, we expect that to be fairly high comparably to most games?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's the answer. You would expect that, your big PSVR titles, the attach rate is going to be really high on those because they're the kind of reason you buy the hardware. Whereas obviously if you buy a console, the reason you buy that is there are many different reasons, and so, it's not necessarily some big first party thing that drives your adoption of the console, or in fact that you buy on it, especially if you're casual gamers. So I think just the economics are a little different on the VR side of, where they expect consumers to kind of buy in at and what they expect to buy. If you're buying it, you're pretty enthusiast anyway, and ergo you're very likely to buy the kind of things that really show off the hardware rather than, the Star Wars Galaxy game, for example. You would think that the people, especially at launch, because it's not a great deal that they've announced, and the biggest thing by far is the Horizon game. So I think they will do quite well out of that, but long term, don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. So, Puck, sorry, I did want to come to you with sort of my That's original question, which was kind of more around VR in general and kind of where we see it go on. Do we expect it to continue to be this sort of smaller niche market, or do we expect it to become more mainstream? And do we expect it to be sort of work as well as games going to be on a headset like Meta would like us to have? Where do you stand on that, mate?
No, I think VR specifically, in my view, is forever going to be like this small niche where it's just for entertainment and for fun experiences. I think in terms of the global outreach, I think that lives in AR or augmented reality. And I appreciate the Quest Pro is kind of trying to be that, but it's still kind of selling itself as a virtual reality thing, when I personally think that the long-term future of everyone's productivity and lives is probably going to fall in like AR glasses or that kind of thing, which is, I know it's kind of been tried before. Again, it's one of those things where phones have become more powerful. Augmented reality experiences through that are becoming more and more of a thing. You see it at a lot of kind of experience shows or events or that kind of thing. And it's the kind of tech that you still kind of see tooted around on the internet. And I've got a bit of background into what those kind of areas as well, what's going on, and that definitely seems to be the future. Like VR is, I mean, don't get me wrong, it has some productivity uses. Like if you're designing massive boats, for example, I know it's used in those kind of environments when you can kind of virtually see and walk around all the pipe work and all the designs and how they kind of and how that runs. And there's uses there outside of gaming. But I think in terms of the mass market, long term, I personally believe that lives in AR and virtual reality, as like the PlayStation VR2 and Quest, those kind of things. I personally think they will just live on as fun toys, effectively. That they'll just live in the gaming space and just run parallel with your standard gaming experience. That's kind of roughly where I see it going.
Yeah. Do you think if Sony were able to get to a fully wireless solution, do you think that would move the needle either way for PSVR?
Yes, is the short answer, because I think like people liked Quest when that first came out, or for those people that could afford it and were into it and had the PCs to run it anyway, people loved the Quest. But the biggest gripe that everyone had was the fact that you're tethered to a box in the corner of your room or something, and you have to have a very specific setup to have a clean experience, or you're very happy to live with like long cables kind of wrapped around your head and down the back of your neck and that kind of stuff. And I think the lower price point of the Quest 2 and having this all-in-one wireless experience has got a lot more people buying it. A load of people love it because of the fact that you haven't got to worry about tripping over anything, apart from the funny videos you see of people jumping into their TVs and stuff like that. But that aside, I do think wireless is going to be the future of VR. And I think if PlayStation are able to, again, once the tech is more there, once they're able to get to a point when they can stream that content from a local machine to a headset and have minimal latency to the point it's almost seamless, I think a lot more people will buy into it. And again, initially, like anything like that, it may well be more expensive. Not necessarily that the tech is more expensive, but it's more, they can charge more for it because it becomes a selling point, right?
Yeah.
The underlying wireless tech will be no more different than what it is now. It's just the fact it's just cracking that speed. It's all software based stuff at the end of the day. Obviously it's hardware speed as well, but hardware speeds, you're limited by physics, right? So there's only so fast you can go. The trick is to get the software to be correct, basically, to enable that high speed transfer. And again, you need hardware to support it, but the software has to work for it as well.
Yeah.
And again, it's just one of those things that either it's not quite there yet, or it's just not been cracked yet. Cracked in a way that it's just not ready for that mass market. But yeah, if PlayStation can pull it off, it'll be your cheapest experience, and it'll be the more fun one to play, because then you can, the Quest 2 has a big advantage of having some experiences where you can, like, you draw out your play space, and assuming you have a big enough room, there are some experiences where you can physically walk around in that dome that you have, that one you've set up, and it is a really good immersive experience when you can, the fact that I can physically walk around in my living room and touch on things in a game or something is incredible. Whereas, not to say you can't do that tethered, but again, there's that, dare I say, health and safety risk I imagine Sony will be very cautious of from people falling over and suing the hell out of them. So yeah, I think a wireless solution is definitely their answer going forward. It's just getting them there. And I think once they are there, I think a lot more people would be more willing to give it a go.
Yeah. On that point, Luke, do you think we'll see PSVR 3 before this generation's out? Or do you think this will kind of see them through all the way to whatever the next hardware happens to be?
Yeah, I think they see it as like a fixed spec thing for a generation. I don't think they'll introduce anything more, after this until PS6, and that will depend on the success of PSVR2 as to whether they continue to go down this path. But as we kind of touched on earlier, even PSVR, the original, didn't seem to be like an overarching, like a huge success, but they still went ahead and wanted to go for this. So,
yeah.
Maybe PSVR 2 just has to do kind of similar numbers, and it will be a success enough that they'll do new hardware, then do it again. But I guess we'll see, right? I have a feeling, even given the price, I think that this one will do better in terms of sales than the first iteration. And I think part of that will be driven by the fact that Sony seem to be kind of going more in terms of software development.
Yeah.
Particularly if, Guerrilla making a VR game is a pretty big deal, and so I think if they can keep doing that, then people will be more naturally drawn to it. Just, I guess the unfortunate thing for Sony is that they're launching at a time of, where people, don't necessarily have loads of money to buy games, let alone a new, headset. So
yeah, it's interesting that you use that as an example, Luke, because I've heard people discuss the gaming industry almost being kind of, I know we're kind of going into one rather than being in the middle of one or coming out of it, but essentially recession-proof. And I think this generation has kind of almost proved that when we've gone through fairly difficult economic times throughout the past couple of years, throughout the pandemic where unemployment was high. I know people were maybe saving money by staying in, but a lot of people unfortunately were either furloughed or lost jobs, and yet still these consoles just wouldn't stop selling. Gaming revenue is kind of at an all-time high. So I mean, I think you probably agree, but I imagine this will probably sell out day one. I can't imagine pre-orders will probably go up and they'll probably blow through whatever inventory they've got set out for launch. And I imagine it might be pretty difficult to get a hold of it, even at that price point.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, you just have to look at something like a 4090, right? Just sold out. Yeah. That's a £1,600 graphics card. It's bonkers. That sold out within a couple of hours. Every retailer site you could go to, it was gone.
Yeah.
And then I think it came out the other day that I don't know if it was Nvidia alone or kind of the total third-party, hardware manufacturers, but something like well over 100,000 4090s were sold in the last couple of weeks. So the enthusiast market will always find a way to buy this stuff. And I again, it was something you can go on the Overclockers forum, right? And I was on the 4090 thread, and there were people I can't really afford this, but I'm going to get one because they're just huge enthusiasts, they just really want to go for it. They need to be kind of the forefront, the precipice of whatever's happening in that space. So I think, PSVR2 will be the same. It will probably sell out pretty quickly unless it's in a huge initial allocation, which I doubt there will be. People find a way, even if the world is on fire economically, people will find a way to buy, enthusiast things if they are enthusiasts. So that's why if you want to get one, I think you have to get your pre-order in probably day one, because you might not be able to otherwise.
Yeah, I think BMG earlier said that pre-orders go up on November 15th. So is your pre-order going to be in straight away then, Luke?
I'm going to try. Yeah, I will try and do it.
Just ask the missus to do it. She's got the magic touch.
Yeah, she's got the magic touch. Yeah, Laura's got the magic. That's not an innuendo, by the way. She's just very good.
Indy's not here. We're all right. It's a safe space.
Yeah,
Indy's in the chat. Not.
Yeah. So no, she will probably assist in that process.
Yeah, and Pux, I know obviously you're still waiting to pick up a PS5, but is this going to be something that you're going to look to jump into fairly quickly after you get your PS5, or is it something you're going to hold off on, do you think?
Well, it's all money at the end of the day. That's the crippling factor, unfortunately. I'd love to say that, as soon as I can, I'd love to be able to jump on one, but the reality, unfortunately, is that I'd probably have to wait a bit longer after at some point procuring a PS5 when I'll then jump onto the VR headset. But I am hoping in the nearer term that Flat picks one up and I'll go on his and play that one. That's my hope. I don't know if he's I know he said he was interested. I don't know whether or not he's changed his mind. I've not spoken to him for a little bit, but
to be fair, I've not heard anyone speak more highly of VR than Flap. I remember when he was telling us about Half-Life Alyx, he was in love with that. And then, was it also Skyrim he played in VR? And he gushed all over that as well. So there's no bigger fan of VR that I know than Flap, to be honest. So I suspect if anyone's going to pick it up, Pucks, it's probably going to be him. So you'll probably have a chance to tootle on over there and maybe have a go. So.
Actually, I got some questions for Luke, actually, because I know, like, this is regarding the games now, I guess, because there's actually been, earlier this week, about 3 days ago, there were a good number of games, I don't know if it was a showcase or not, but, like, various websites out of nowhere just being enamored with PSVR2 news, and all these different games which were confirmed for, like, launch titles. Again, among those being Horizon, Call of the Mountain, there's Resident Evil 4, the VR version, Resident Evil Village, there's a Star Wars game coming out and things like that. So, like Luke, again, if you're no doubt you're going to be picking one up at some point. Is there any particular game that you're looking forward to that you want to try, like day one? Do you want that horror experience of Village in VR or Horizon?
Yeah, well, I think I'll go for both. As in, like Horizon is like the must buy. I think if you're getting it day one, like. Easily.
But there's even a bundle, isn't there, with that game only, right?
With that game, so that's that. I will definitely play Village. I don't know if you can get like an upgrade if you've already got the game. I don't even know if they've talked about that, but
apparently there are some games which have been confirmed to have free upgrades. But again, it doesn't necessarily say which ones though. So
yeah. So Village for sure I will try, because I think that would be really cool to experience. Cool and terrifying, probably somewhat arousing at points when Lady Dimitrescu comes on screen as well. So
are we sure Indy's not on the show tonight or something?
I'm possessed by the spirit of UK Dazzles, I think. I think that will be a really cool experience. But it would be like, I'm always a bit reticent with that because I imagine in some points, like having played the game start to finish and thinking about like certain aspects of the game in VR, like it would be genuinely really quite terrifying. So
it's like part of me was going to say that if you've played the game already, then you kind of know what's coming, but
but you don't.
Other games, and then you jump on the VR, and it's like actually you're become really wary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you do know what's coming, but actually you don't, because you only know what's coming from the perspective of you sat on your sofa in your pants on your TV. Like you don't know what's coming, like when it's literally feels like you're in the experience. So I'm kind of like, oh, that would be really cool, and I know like this bit's coming up, but I imagine it would be really unnerving at points. People who play the game as well, when you get to, I can't even remember what it's called, but it's this certain like
the doll's house bit.
Yes, that bit, right?
I know
in that particular bit, like that was scary enough, like just on a TV. I can't imagine what that's like in VR. So yeah, be fun though.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I've not played Village, but I remember some of the earlier parts in particular of Resident Evil 7. I can imagine some of them being utterly terrifying in VR. I've not actually tried it too much myself. I've played a little bit of VR, but honestly, it makes me feel sick within about 10 minutes of putting the headset on. So it's probably not something I'm ever really going to play, unfortunately. But I know, Pucks, you mentioned that obviously the displays is something that can trigger the motion sickness, so maybe PSVR 2 might be something that maybe helps. That'll be good to hear from some people who maybe suffered from VR sickness when on other devices, how they maybe find PSVR 2. So
regarding that, actually, I think one of the things I would be interested to hear about, again, once reviews and stuff come out, because again, with like a Quest 2, for example, it's just like a concave magnifying glass, effectively, which helps capture like a wider angle of your vision within the image. But the PSVR 2 has eye tracking as well, so it actually focuses your it's apparently meant to focus on the specific areas. Because again, on the Quest 2, if you're like looking straight ahead, but then you kind of look at the corners, you can see it's blurry without physically turning your head. You have to turn to have it clear. Whereas it'd be quite nice to see how the reviews come out, to be able to just look one way and then just kind of move your eyes around and have it still be clear in those parts, if that makes sense.
Yeah. We've got Pux is now Luke. Luke is now Pux. It's reordering you both because of the video. I'll sort that out a bit later. Or if Luke puts his video back on in a moment, it should hopefully fix itself. So wonderful. Well, I think that should cover everything for PSVR2 for now. Obviously, it's coming out February 22nd. Pre-orders go live November 15th. I'm sure we'll be chatting about it a little bit next year once it comes out, and it'll be interesting to see some of the previews and reviews that come out ahead of it. Although I do believe a number of media outlets got some hands-on time with it fairly recently. I remember watching Kind of Funny's previews of it, and they seemed pretty high on it from what I recall. So yeah. Anything else on PSVR 2, gents, before we move on? No?
I think we're covered, personally, I think.
Get saving.
Yeah.
If you want it.
Get saving indeed.
Open your OnlyFans accounts.
Yeah. I'll ask Indy if he can throw us a bone from his OnlyFans savings. Yeah. So well, before we move on to the next up, I just want to say thanks for a few people who are joining the chat. We've got it's a little bit saucy in there at the moment, shall we say. I've just seen BMGs asking for people to step on him and things like that. I've not read all of the chat. That's all that I've got in there. But yeah, we do.
He's talking about Lady Demetresque.
Naughty BMG. So yeah, but we do have BMG in there. We've got the indie gamer has joined us as well. Stubbs Gaming is in there as well. I believe, who else did we have in a little bit earlier? Tuku and Gula was in. The Owl Chronicles is in there as well. Thank you all very much for joining. I guess I'll take this opportunity to ask people to like, share, and subscribe. All that good stuff if they don't mind. Indy's just said that his OnlyFans is pure filth, apparently. So if you're into that kind of thing, then you know where to go. So, but moving on very quickly, God of War reviews, gents. Obviously we spoke about it briefly at the beginning. Ragnarok comes out on Wednesday, November 9th. Reviews dropped just this. Was it Friday or Thursday that they came out? Was one of the two, just this past few days, and it's fair to say that it's being absolutely adored, unless you're IGN Korea, in which case it was a bit meh. But everyone else seems to absolutely bloody love the game, which I don't think is too surprising, but it has received pretty ridiculously high praise. Now, I know both of you guys are excited for it, so how have these reviews got you feeling? Is it just increased the hype for the game, or have you guys read any of them, or have you just kind of looked at the scores? Where you're at with those?
I'm not surprised, personally.
No.
Go on, Luke, you go first. Sorry.
No, you can go first, Bugs.
I'm not avoiding spoilers, all that kind of stuff I said earlier, but even so, I'm just seeing like headlines and stuff of people saying that the game's fantastic, it's incredible, it's a good add-on to the first game, effectively. It doesn't look like it's like it doesn't look well. Where do I start? So I did read a couple days ago, I think, early in the week, that I believe Santa Monica confirmed that it's Santa Monica, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going weird for a second. They confirmed that this game is actually built for PS4, apparently, and then it's just been upscaled and up-resed, blah blah blah, for PS5. So I think when that was revealed, again a couple of days ago, a lot of people were a bit skeptical. Oh right, okay, how good's it going to look? But it looks good anyway. So playing it, if it's a PS4 game, it looks incredible, and you're going to be playing on a PS5, that you're obviously going to get the extra, the big texture packs and things like that bolted on, and it's going to look fantastic and incredible. And people have been saying that even out of the gates, apparently it's just insane. Apparently, I don't know what it is, but apparently the opening sequence in this one tops the beginning of the first game, and stuff like that, and it throws you straight into the action, apparently, and as I wouldn't expect much else, if I'm perfectly honest. But that Korea one that you mentioned, though, Scott, that was bizarre. But then again, I can appreciate that a lot of the, I don't know. To be fair, I have no idea how big the game was in the Asian markets, but I can understand if this type of game wasn't that appealing for certain Eastern audiences, but yeah, I don't know. But no, it has got me more. Has it got me more hyped? I don't know if it's got me more hyped for it. If anything, it just confirmed my anticipations that it is going to be a great game. And there hasn't been anything. There's nothing that's come out that said that. Oh, it's really good, except for this really big bit in the middle that is just absolute shite. So I think there's nothing like that's been said. I think the only things I have seen that have been very minor negative points are to do with some sort of new gear system that's in the game, and a number of reviews that I have kind of scanned have said that it's quite consistent, that particular feature feels like it's been bolted on or something. But from, again, how I understand it, I don't believe it's much different from what was in the first game, in that you're kind of playing a bit of a numbers game with certain equipment and stuff like that. But again, Luke, I might be wrong. You might have read more about it than I have. But
yeah, I saw some stuff on. I saw. So I mean, I haven't. I've tried to avoid reading reviews entirely for it, and I haven't read any. I've seen, blurbs, conclusions of reviews and paragraphs, etc. I saw some comments on the gear system, but they were all positive, the ones I saw. So I don't know if some people don't like that. And I think the reason people did like it was because it was just better than the first one. Because the gear system in the first one was like, okay. But again, I guess stuff like that's going to kind of vary from person to person anyway. So... yeah, I mean, like, in terms of my thoughts on it, I'm kind of not surprised, and I am surprised in a sense, because I genuinely didn't think it was going to get as good a score as the original, because the original got, on Metacritic 94, right, which is just a ridiculously high score. Now, someone has finished it multiple times, like, that's super well deserved. I mean, I would give it higher. But it's always pretty difficult, unless, like, if that's the base that you're starting from, right, and then you're making a sequel, you kind of expect that to go down, because it's not like you're going from Uncharted, the first one, which scored in the 70s, low 80s, was kind of a good game, but it wasn't incredible. And then going to Uncharted 2, which is like one of the best action adventure games ever made, and that had nowhere else to go but up anyway. So I was always kind of like, are they going to hit the same critical reception, noting that, this is an evolution of the first game? It won't have the same impact that the first game had in terms of the way that it fundamentally changed the God of War formula. So I was quite surprised by the score, and by people generally, from what I've seen, saying that it's better than the first one. Which is saying something, because the first one is, like, genuinely, I think, one of the best games ever made. And people some people disagree with that, but it's certainly one of the best action adventure games ever made. So yeah, it was surprising that it scored as well as it did, and it just got my hype up more, I guess, to play it. And as Puck said, I've read things, not in spoilery, but about, how bombastic it is, even in the first hour, how it really goes for it, how that kind of pacing is sustained all throughout the playtime. And there's been comments on the quality of the side quests in this. I think Gene Park said they were better than The Witcher 3, which, has some of the best side quests that have ever been in any game. I just can't wait to play it. It's just a shame it's still a couple of days away. But I think, Pucks, your point was right as well about, like, because when I went back to play God of War the other day on PS5, and I had, I've got the buff, it runs at 60 on PS5, but resolution is the same as it was on PS4 Pro, and it's got HDR, and that's about it. It's still one of the better looking games out there. It's still an genuinely amazing looking game. And this one, apparently visually, it is an uplift. It's not the same sort of uplift from Horizon Zero Dawn to Horizon Forbidden West, right? Which is, like, if anybody's played that, especially on PlayStation 5, that genuinely looks like a proper sequel in terms of visual uplift. But it's still an amazing looking game now, the original God of War. So I think it will blow people away. And I think I saw the Digital Foundry say fundamentally, they said it's not doing anything like in terms of tech that's like super above and beyond the first game, but it's just so well done. You know, the production value is so high, it's so polished, and it's kind of more epic in scale that you know, people will be really impressed by it. So yeah, I just can't wait for it. I mean, I'm just super hyped. It's going to be crazy that this is ending the Norse mythology arc. So I just, you know, I'm kind of bamboozled by how it's going to end. But the thing I was also worried about.
Say that then again, like, how's it going to end? 'Cause it's obviously
how's it going to end? Like, what are they going to do? And the thing that I noticed, again, just from the summaries that I read, was that everybody was like, the ending's great. And I was like, that was the bit that was worrying me, because how do you end the story that started in one, right? Like, where do you go? How do you wrap that up? So it was always I thought that was always going to be the really, like, the thing that would divide. Because, like, look at The Last of Us 2, right? You know, like, to me, that's an incredible story, but the direction that goes is very brave, but it's a direction that people, you know, some people would just don't like. Right, they just fundamentally don't like it for whatever reason. Whereas this, you know, the acclaim has been for the ending and the story has been universal. So apart from IGN Korea, I'm sure when Survivor's review comes out, they'll have a similar opinion as well. So there's always one. Doesn't matter what game it is, there's always one. So yeah, I just really can't wait to play it. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I also have remained spoiler free, which is pretty, considering I was spoiled on most of the things on Last of Us Part 2, or like certainly one specific thing, which didn't ruin the experience in the end. But you know, it's shit when you really love a story and then you're looking forward to where it goes and someone spoils it. So far spoiler free, but then again, I've had God of War muted on Twitter for 2.5 months. So, like, just not clicking on any God of War videos on YouTube. Like, I'm just trying to remain as dark as possible, and I've succeeded so far. But yeah, I only watched the last trailer once when it aired, basically. So, because I was like, I need to forget everything I've just seen, basically. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm really like Sony Santa Monica. Pretty much, I think, by this game have cemented themselves as one of the best studios in the world. You know, certainly up there with Naughty Dog, you know, Playground, Coalition, those types of studios.
The one thing I wanted to add to that as well, actually, is performance for PS4, because I just realised that apparently a couple of hours ago, about 5 o'clock this evening, an article has come out about how it runs on PS4. I mean, I said earlier that, yeah, you know, apparently, according to the studio, the game was made to push the PS4 to the absolute max, but again, large majority of people could be, well, maybe not majority, I guess, depending on how lucky you are, but a large proportion of players will be playing on PS5, so you're going to get all of the performance perks from that anyway, whether, you know, 4K 60 or whatever else. So again, playing on PS4, I was still excited for it, but a little part of me was wondering, because I remember when they brought out the like the digital kind of picture of, oh, on PS5, you've got these performance options. And then we made fun of the whole Gotham Knights not having this stuff. And then this game's got all of it and that kind of jazz. And you know, I knew PS4 was going to be running at 30 frames. And it is at 1080p. But I think on that little, again, that kind of picture, it came up with saying that it's up to 30. I think it was quite... it wasn't specific in... Well... It was specific, I guess. But
do you have a Pro or a normal PS4? Pux?
No, I have a normal base PS4.
Yeah. So I think it said targeted 30 FPS, which I imagine means mostly locked, but will probably have dips.
This is why I bring it up, because this article I'm just kind of scanning right now is all saying that actually, if you go from PS5 to PS4, then obviously you have the 60 to 30 dips. So don't do that, because you've got no reason to play on the previous gen if you own a PS5. But basically, a lot of what I'm seeing already is the game runs absolutely fine at 30 frames. And again, it's one of those things where if you've been playing 60 frame games, jump to this one, you obviously notice it initially. But again, it's not like it's ridiculously fast paced, right? So like at all times. So a lot of people say that, you know what, you do get used to it. I personally know I get used to 30 frame games. It's, you know, I'm used to playing that anyway. But I already feel more positive now that, again, this article saying that actually it runs brilliant even on a base PS4. So that's got me even that little tiny bit more hyped for it now. So
nice. Well, I'm sure this time next week, we'll probably be chatting a little bit more about it. It'll be good to get both your thoughts on the game. Obviously, we will keep that conversation as spoiler-free as we possibly can for anyone who's maybe at different parts of the game. But I'm sure we'll be getting thoughts from both of you next Sunday after you've had a chance to jump in after the first few days, and that'll be good to get everyone's thoughts. And yeah, I guess we'll have two perspectives, PS4 and PS5, and see how you feel it does hold up, Pucks. But I think the fact that it'll look as good as it does on a PS4. I'm not too sure if they've released any PS4 footage themselves yet. Obviously, all the trailers that they've released, I'm assuming, are PS5 based, and obviously it looks unbelievable in those trailers. But I think from some of their past games, I wouldn't have any concerns about the PS4 version, because some of the other games that are released are cross-gen still look fantastic on PS4. So yeah. One final question for you both, gents, before we move on to another topic is, and I know it probably feels a little bit weird asking this question before this game's even released, but where does Sony Santa Monica go after Ragnarok? Do they release another game in the God of War franchise, starting a new arc, almost kind of like what they did with 2018? Do you think Santa Monica maybe try dipping the toes in a new IP?
I think the other question, if you're talking about if there would be a new God of War, I think, or, you know, where does it go? I think the question would be, who else would you give it to if not Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Because they've proven themselves to be, like, I don't know, like they've just done such a great job with this. Like the engineering and the art direction, the story, all of these different game dev elements have come together, and they've put together this, I don't want to say completely perfect, you know, this almost perfect gaming package of what everyone's been looking forward to the point, you know, are there many other studios out there which have as good a reputation outside, you know, I know you said Naughty Dog, they are going to be one of them, but again, they're unlikely to take God of War, in my opinion, at any point soon. I could be wrong, of course.
I mean, I should probably say I wasn't expecting anybody else maybe to take over the franchise, but maybe did they take a break from God of War in the same way that Naughty Dog have kind of alternated in the past between sort of Last of Us and Uncharted and things like that? And do they try something new, or do they try to do something new within the God of War franchise?
Yeah, I think whatever they're doing next is not God of War, because I think if you look at, like, there's evidence to suggest that whatever they're doing next is not God of War, which is kind of, well, there's multiple parts. One is that after God of War, you know, released, Cory Barlog explicitly came out and said that the thing he'd like to do next is something new. Like he didn't want to do a God of War game. And he hasn't done a God of War game because he didn't direct this one. It was Eric Williams, which is a long-standing tradition of Sony Santa Monica for God of War games. You know, they let someone else direct the next one. David Jaffe did number 1, and then it was Corey for 2, and then Stig Asmussen, who was the director for 3, who's now at Respawn doing the Star Wars Jedi games. So, you know, Eric Williams did this one, and Corey mentioned months ago when they were kind of just not first talking about it, but talking about this more significantly, you know, he was saying that I'm working on something, but we're not ready to talk about what that is, you know, at the minute. So I think, you know, the fact that they've wrapped up, or they will be wrapping up this arc, the Norse mythology element in this game, along with Corey's words, suggests that whatever they're doing next is something different, new IP probably. And I think they will go back to God of War, but in the same way that Naughty Dog will invariably go back to Uncharted, right? But they're not doing it right now. So they'll give it a break. I think if they would have said, continue to commit to this 2018 God of War being a trilogy, which initially they set out they thought it was going to be, then I think we'd probably be having a different conversation, because I think the next game would be just the third God of War, right, in that trilogy. But because they've wrapped it up here, it suggests that they're ready. They felt they could deliver, a satisfying conclusion in a single game and then move on to something else. So that's what I think they'll do next. And to be honest, I think they deserve that. Like, Corey kind of really deserves to make something that's, because God of War isn't his, right? It was Jaffe's game. Jaffe made that series. He just made two amazing iterations of it, Corey Barlog. So I think, he kind of deserves to do something new. And God, that's really exciting. I love God of War, and I can't wait for Ragnarok, but nothing gets me more excited in a gaming sense of big studios making new IPs, because I think that's where you get the most unexpected stuff, and you get this amazing, these amazing reveals. So I think whatever they're doing is that, and they probably have had that kind of whatever that is in pre-production for a while, and now that Ragnarok's out, I imagine the whole studio will probably go onto it. I could be wrong, but I think that's probably the way the wind's traveling.
Yeah, got a couple of comments in the chat from Stubbs here, who says that the Sony Santa Monica are working on another game and have been for a couple of years, he believes. And then you also mentions that Alana Pierce, formerly of IGN, she moved over to Sony Santa Monica as a writer. So she said that she isn't working on God of War. It's a completely different game. That's kind of all she said. And obviously, as you mentioned, previous comments from Corey Barlock, sort of back that up as well. It is interesting, and there is something unbelievably exciting, I think, about that, Luke, because when you've got a team with the pedigree of Sony Santa Monica coming out with something new, it's so unbelievably easy to be excited or hyped for that, even with only a shred of information about that project. It's like in the same way that regardless of what Kojima was going to do after he left Konami, people were going to be excited because he's got that pedigree that I don't think an awful lot of people or studios have. I think Corey's certainly sort of in that upper echelon of game directors in a way. So obviously, like I say, it seems a bit weird talking about what's next when this one hasn't even come out yet. But it is interesting to see where that goes. And I guess we'll revisit this in about 3 or 4 years time. Maybe,
when we finally hear whatever they're doing.
Exactly.
New God of War. We'll just be completely wrong. They were doing a new God of War all along.
Yeah, they were remaking Ascension, I think.
Yeah, oh God,
the whole time.
They were trying to redo the worst one they've made. Ascension wasn't that bad, actually. It was quite.
Yeah, but I think maybe that's part of. And I was watching a Jeff Grubb video earlier on today, and he was talking about sort of them taking this 2-game approach to some of their titles, kind of at Sony in general. And he was talking about how sort of when you get beyond that third game, you've got the bots are here. I've just noticed you kind of get at the point of diminishing returns. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where they go. And like I say, next week I'm sure we'll be chatting about everyone's thoughts on God of War Ragnarok. I was going to say maybe I would ask one of you guys to collect some footage, but based on how the first game starts, I've played that bit at least, and it's a pretty epic start. If the second game starts with something even better, I doubt we'd even want to spoil that as well. So maybe I'll capture some footage of the original game to go over with
that's a good idea.
with the conversation. Then maybe we'll get some Ragnarok footage for a future show when people have had a chance to jump in. So lovely. Anything else that you guys want to say on Ragnarok before we move on?
I think the only other thing I wanted to add regarding what you said about what their next game might be, and that it's not God of War. I think that is a good thing as well, because you do hear a lot of story, a lot of like game dev journals and things like that. You do hear so many stories of the engineers and the staff working on these things do themselves just get burnt out working on the same title like year after year. So I think it is just good that they're working on something different, just for the freshness and the fresh perspective of something different and new to work on, right? And it just makes makes everyone just feel better. It almost refreshes your enthusiasm, I guess, that you're working on something new and different and exciting, rather than
Yeah.
again, I know people, us as consumers love it, but I imagine if you're looking at this thing day in, day out for years on end, it must get old. At some point, you must think, oh, I don't want to keep modifying how the axe works. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, you get to those points and you think, oh, I'm fed up of tweaking values on how quick the axe should return and shit like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Pucks, to be fair, you're kind of the one, if anything, that has. Sorry, just the conversation in the chat's got me tickled. You're the one with the. I guess
is that what you guys are laughing at?
Yeah, sorry, mate.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, you're the one with the development background, so I guess you can probably appreciate where. Although, yes, I guess there's probably tedious tasks, as there are in any job, where you kind of got to just get it done in a way. But probably as you see this, imagine if you were working on this game from before the 2018 sort of reboot, if that's the best way to describe it, and then you saw the franchise kind of dip and then come back in such a way, and then see it sort of turn into what it is now, and with the excitement of this new game, I imagine seeing that, even if you were tweaking values on an axe, is probably pretty exciting to be a part of that. But yeah, maybe going in, if it was maybe another game, maybe that's where maybe burnout comes in a little bit. But obviously there'll be fresh eyes and fresh talent that come into these teams all the time that help, keep the team energized. I'm sure. So yeah, but I imagine that there probably is a lot of that. Just imagine if you were one of the devs at 343 Pucks, tweaking values on the cost of things in the shop rather than the value of the axe. Yeah. So yeah, could be worse. So so I guess maybe I mean we've got a little bit of time here, gents. I know we started a little bit later due to the technical issues we had at the beginning, but I did also want to touch on the Jason Schreier article there that came out of Bloomberg regarding the Square Enix Montreal. I guess now they don't exist, but they were renamed to I can't even remember. We said at the beginning, I can't remember what it was called, Oname or something along those lines. Omino, yeah, something like that. It doesn't matter too much now. Unfortunately, the big news was that they've been shut down. I do actually want to touch on that a little bit before we go on to kind of the more big Xbox sort of related news. Another piece that came out of that article is the fact that apparently Eidos Montreal are assisting with the Fable development, which comes off the back of Crystal Dynamics helping out with Perfect Dark. And I think we can maybe touch on it, but I think the question's been asked, like, why didn't Microsoft just buy these studios if they're going to be paying them to support them anyway? But we'll touch on maybe the unfortunate closure of that studio now. They were only recently embraced as the term has come to be, so it was a little bit of a surprise, I think, to see that this studio was shut down, especially after they'd maybe only been renamed 2 or 3 weeks prior. Look, I'll ask you maybe for your input on this first. Do you think this was the plan all along from Embracer? Because surely they did their due diligence before the purchase. They knew what they were working on. Do you think the plan was maybe, look, Square said, look, if you want them, you've got to buy Montreal as well, and they thought, okay, cool, we'll just shut them down afterwards? Or do you think something has possibly happened where maybe now that they got a hold of the studio, they thought, actually, no, this isn't maybe what we wanted?
Yeah, it's really weird, isn't it? I can't imagine that they got to the point where, pre-acquisition, where Square were saying, well, basically, unless you take the, Square Enix Montreal as well, there's either no deal or the terms are going to be different. And the reason I say that is obviously because then they were rebranded post-acquisition, which you just wouldn't proceed with if you didn't have any plans for the studio. So that suggests that they were rebranded, and then in the interim period, for whatever reason, Embracer were just like, actually, this is just a no-hoper. Like, we've kind of reevaluated the project they're working on and the cost. It may be Embracer just cutting costs generally, and that unfortunately they're a more expendable element than Eidos Montreal or some of the other studios like Crystal Dynamics. So it's a bit weird, really, isn't it? But yeah, it's really unfortunate. I don't know if they said what were happening to the employees there, whether they were being reallocated internally or whether they were just out of a job.
Yeah, I think
they said it was going to try to, didn't they?
Yeah, I think that was the
people.
plan to reallocate amongst other studios.
Yeah.
But they can say that all they want. There will inevitably have been job losses as part of that. They're not going to really be able to reallocate an entire studio, which is obviously a bit of a shame.
I doubt many people are going to want to physically relocate just to keep themselves in a job, right?
Yeah, I mean Montreal's a fairly big hotbed of game development.
Yeah,
I believe. So hopefully, anyone that is affected has been able to, or is able to find new employment fairly soon. But yeah, you're right, Pux. If the jobs aren't available there, you can't just get up and go and move to a different city or even country just on a whim like that. So it really does suck, unfortunately, for the people that are impacted. I mean, for those who aren't aware, Square Enix Montreal were primarily a mobile development studio. I believe they were responsible for the Go franchise of games. So you've got Hitman Go, Lara Croft Go. I think Deus Ex got a Go game as well. I'm trying to remember exactly which ones. But I believe they're primarily a mobile studio. I think what came out is that maybe Embracer had kind of made the decision to focus more on console and PC development as opposed to mobile development, which is why they made the decision to shut them. But yeah, it's a rather unusual, a little bit of a shame. As we said, hopefully they find employment pretty soon. But this is, I think, maybe part of the risk of being acquired is maybe if the big giant corporation that takes you over decides that you're expendable or no longer required, then off you trot, unfortunately. So yeah, best of luck to anybody that's impacted. But like I say, the other big news that came out of that article was regarding Eidos Montreal, who was supposedly helping with the development of Playground's Fable reboot, which was obviously announced a number of years ago. As I said earlier, that's off the back of Crystal Dynamics, another one of those studios that Square sold to Embracer, assisting with the development of Perfect Dark. So, Box, you're excited for Fable, I believe. Am I right in thinking that you're a fan?
Oh yeah, I am a Fable fan. Yeah.
Yeah. How does this make you feel then, mate? Does this get you more excited about the game, knowing that Playground, who obviously fantastic in the racing genre, don't have an awful lot of experience in I guess an open world RPG, which we expect Fable to be, are getting some assistance from a more established studio like Eidos Montreal?
If I'm honest, it doesn't make me any more or less excited personally, because it seems to become a more and more common trend nowadays where especially bigger franchises or ones that have got a bit of a legacy behind them and they want to have this new ambitious game coming out, it seems quite normal now to have multiple big studios now working on these projects. So I mean, it can only be a good thing, definitely, the fact that you've got like another big studio coming in to assist. But no, I wouldn't say I'm any more or less excited for it. If anything, it just all I kind of hear and see in my own head is that there's a lot more resources being thrown at the game now. So hopefully that means that it's either a lot of scope that needs to be covered or just, it could just be little, or it could be something small. Maybe it's just a massive team of artists to help create high quality art assets or stuff like that. And I appreciate it's going to be more than that as well. But I'd like, more hands on deck on big projects like these can only ever be a good thing. So if anything, I just worry. I don't worry. I just hope that people's expectations don't then start to grow unrealistically high when they start to see these big names that are also helping out, and then when we start seeing the first proper in-game trailers, for example, that if it's not to people's expectations, people then start basically shitting on these studios and going, oh, they weren't the right people for it, or what was going on, or whatever else. And so I suppose more so, I just hope that those kind of things don't happen, but I have very minimal doubt that will happen. I think a lot of us are pretty positive in that, yes, Playground aren't experienced in this type of game, but the games that they do make are mechanically complex, they require a lot of resource. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes to get these things to work. So they definitely have the experience to manage a project of high magnitude and complexity. Arguably, it's just getting someone at Eidos Montreal who may have a bit more experience, or just have those few, even if it's just those few key people, whether it's engineers or artists or whatever else, or just other technical people to get involved. It's just small pieces of expertise can really go a long way. So having those specific heads hopefully join the fray and help out will hopefully mean that this game will just be better than what we were hoping it's already going to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Pux. And obviously, I guess it's really difficult to kind of have too much of an opinion on Fable, other than kind of your initial excitement at this point, because we've seen bloody nothing about it. Unfortunately, it's kind of my most anticipated Xbox game. But I think after playing Guardians of the Galaxy recently, which I thought was genuinely excellent. This news was kind of a little bit more welcome. Had it been before Guardians of the Galaxy came out, then maybe my sort of thoughts would have been slightly different. But look, AAA game development, this is normal, isn't it? Because I've seen a lot of people come out and Stubbs. I hope you don't mind me using a comment. This is purely just as an example, but I did see other people with similar sentiment. But I think Stubbs mentioned in our Discord, and a few other people on Twitter were like, "Well, does this just mean that Xbox needs a lot of help with their games? Are they struggling to hire?" Especially off the back of Crystal Dynamics helping with Perfect Dark. Is this fairly common? Is this normal? Is this something that maybe we should be concerned about? Indie Gamers just mentioned in the chat there that maybe multiple teams means potentially more watered down vision, because it's two completely separate teams working on the same project. Where do you stand on that, mate?
It's a little bit difficult, isn't it? I think the problem is that, I mean, AAA development is like this in a lot of ways, as in, you have a primary studio that's developing the game, and that might be a very big studio. And then you may have multiple other studios also assisting on development, kind of support studios effectively. These ones I do find a little bit weird, because it's not as if it's like, and let's take the first example of this, which was the Initiative, where you had the Initiative, leading development of the game, and then you had basically a AAA studio in its own right in Crystal Dynamics, also helping develop the game. And you have the same situation here, where you have Playground, who have hired massively for this as well, because it's a entirely separate team from the Horizon team. Leading development, and now Eidos Montreal are also helping. And we don't know, I don't know what that means, as in, is that all of the studio? Probably not. It's probably just a portion of Eidos Montreal staff. But it's still a bit, the concept of, AAA studios in their own right, kind of co-developing games together or becoming support studios. That's a bit weird. And it's only really happened in recent times with Square's studios, or now Embracer's studios. So I don't think it's necessarily indicative of something wrong with the development of the games themselves, but it is a bit weird. It's a bit strange a concept. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like your normal, like I don't know, Saber Interactive are helping with the development of Halo, right? Which would be something we just expect, but then Saber don't themselves typically make huge AAA games out of their own, budget. That they're kind of known for being that. So, I don't know. But the one. I mean, I was more worried about Perfect Dark than this, because I think Playground are just, the Initiative were a new studio, still are a new studio, so nobody really knew what to expect, and making new studios is really hard. So when that news came out, it's kind of like, oh, I told you so. Like, this hasn't been going well, and we don't know if that's actually the case. It probably isn't. It's probably been going okay. with Playground, you kind of trust them more, right? Because
Yeah.
they know how to make big games and they've been a studio for a long time. And they're very talented. It does suggest that whatever the game is, whatever the final thing is, it's very ambitious because of what, they're going to be paying a lot of money to involve Eidos Montreal in it.
Yeah.
And they've hired a boatload of talent from elsewhere. But just kind of at the position, like something has happened in the development of this game because they clearly announced it way too early.
Yeah.
Like, they did something way too early. And I think on the premise that maybe this would, be more out there by now. Now, that doesn't mean something's gone wrong, but it might be that they had to change scope at some point, or they had to kind of, think about what they were doing in the game and reevaluate how they were going to end up at that state. So more than anything, I just hope we see it soon, because I think it really has been a long time. Just another, I don't know, a gameplay trailer would be nice, or just something, right? Just not a CG trailer. Like, we need to see some gameplay, because like you, I think in the entire Xbox Studios portfolio, apart from whatever id are making next, it's my most anticipated game. So I'd really like to see what it looks like, what they're going for, what's it going to be like. That would be great.
Yeah, you do raise an interesting point there, because we spoke about sort of it's not uncommon for a game to have multiple developers involved. You used a good example of maybe someone like Saber helping out with Halo. The example that I kind of used when we were chatting to Stubbs, he's mentioned there is, when God of War Ragnarok went gold, they kind of said, look, I think 8 different partners had maybe assisted them in some way on the development of God of War Ragnarok. But yeah, I think the key difference with Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal is the fact that these are traditional kind of developers that lead their own games. They've Eidos Montreal just come off Guardians of the Galaxy, which was unbelievably well received. And Crystal Dynamics, obviously famous behind the most recently the Tomb Raider franchise, if I remember. Yeah, it is Tomb Raider.
And Avengers.
And oh Christ, yeah. Well, that maybe explains it. It's funny that Avengers just had completely just left my mind. I forgot it even existed.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, but these are obviously developers that are traditionally, AAA developers that are responsible for their own project. And it almost feels like they've kind of been relegated somewhat to support studios in a way, almost in the same way that kind of Activision has done with some of their smaller studios, where they've kind of just demoted them essentially to kind of Call of Duty support studios. And I don't know if that's, I'm wondering why that might be. Is this a decision that you think that Square had made? Do you think maybe Xbox got in with the 2-for-1 deal with Crystal Dynamics helping out on Perfect Dark and Eidos helping out on Fable at the time? Or is this maybe a decision that has happened more recently and has maybe come off the back of maybe not great commercial success with their last 2 projects, and this is seen as something that's a little less risky for them?
Yeah, I'm a bit more inclined to think that this was something that Square put in place before they sold them. Because I think it makes a bit more sense that Square, having, complained about the results of its Western games for many years, finally said, right, enough's enough. We're just going to put you into a holding pattern effectively until we figure out what to do. And, entered into this deal with Microsoft to effectively help develop some of their projects with these studios. And then obviously, Embracer have bought them subject to those, contracts effectively, and probably decided to just run with it because it doesn't stop, the studios being scaled up and working on other things as well. But yeah, I think that's probably what happened, because I don't, it wouldn't make much sense to me for Embracer to buy them and then go, in this case, and then go, right, your first project is to make a game that we are not even publishing. It just wouldn't make much sense for that to be the first decision. So I think they probably took the studio subject to all of these deals and just said, right, that's fine. In some ways it will probably help some of the people in those studios, as in, they'll get to work on a current gen only big budget AAA game that will help them and aid them in their development of, games going forward. And I think Schreier said, didn't he, that they had I think Eidos Montreal working on a new IP, and they were working on a new Deus Ex as well.
Yeah,
that
so it's not the only project that they're working on.
Yeah, so it's not the only thing that they're working on, but each of those is like the Deus Ex game is like probably pre-production at this point, so it's like super way out. The new IP is probably the closest thing to a production game, and maybe they've just got some time. I mean, Sony did this with Naughty Dog, where they said we've got a massive bunch of developers not doing anything. They've released The Last of Us Part 2. Some of them are working on factions, and then we've got this whole group that actually are not working on anything. So the idea was that the Part 1 project would be something to acclimatize them to new hardware, and it could be commercially successful. So if that's happening at Naughty Dog, maybe this is the same concept, right? That Square or Embracer, probably Square, just thought actually they have a gap now of development while they figure out what they want to do, or we figure out what we want to do with them. So let's get them just working on something and get some money out of it, and then we can go from there. So.
Yeah, that's kind of, I guess, the angle from Square's perspective. As I say, they've not been particularly complimentary towards their Western studios in the past. I still find Square an utterly bizarre company, to be honest. I mean, just this past week, this past couple of weeks, I think, first of all, they spoke about how the Japanese market isn't profitable enough now for them just to focus on that particular market. So they need kind of more, maybe a more global audience, just shortly after selling off their Western game studios, which was a little bit of irony there. And then just this past few days, the project that people believe to be, was Parasite Eve? I can't remember the name. What was it, like Biogenesis or something like that?
Symbiogenesis.
That's the one. Turned out to be an NFT collection project, which Square they never cease to amaze me. Square and Platinum are truly bizarre developers because they both come out with some incredible stuff, but they also come out with some shite as well.
Yeah, so. It's very bizarre, isn't it? Like, you look at the slate of, I mean, like, for me at least, the slate of Square Enix games, Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, and then 16, at least one of those will hit next year, maybe both. Yeah. Forspoken starting to look better, like, as more stuff's being released. And, like, they have all that cool stuff, and then, they think, Parasite Eve, what would that make? What could we use that for? Oh yeah, let's do an NFT project spin-off. It's just like Platinum making, Babylon's Fall, isn't it? Yeah. Although wasn't that published by Square?
Yeah, it was. It was probably so that was a combination of both of them.
Combination of fuck ups. Yeah, and I remember as well because I was looking forward to that game because initially it was meant to be like a Platinum style, character action game. That was the original pitch. That was the original trailer. And then it went dark, and then it
came back as this live service,
live service game, and everybody was like, "The fuck! Like, what are you doing?" Like, and then obviously it just completely. That was no doubt like a Square orientated decision. I'm sure Platinum also agreed, but like, I'm sure that was led by Square. It's just bonkers. It's
well, Platinum have spoken about their kind of the fact that they want to pivot more to live service development because I can understand why any developer would want to. I guess it's an easier way to, well, it's not easy by any stretch, obviously, but it's a way of sort of being able to monetize a game longer term rather than just the sales of a game. So I can understand it, but obviously when it goes bad. And I don't think there's a worse example than Babylon's Fall. The impact can be quite bad. I think just reputational damage alone can be quite significant. Platinum in a way are kind of a little bit of a dare I say it, a laughing stock when Babylon's Fall was re-revealed and then was released. Like you saw the articles, like player base on Steam for Babylon's Fall was single digits a week after launch, and it became sort of a meme in itself. Obviously, they've got other projects to fall on, Bayonetta was obviously very well received and stuff. So but it is it is funny that it's we obviously speak about Easy Allies a little bit as well. Look, I don't know if you caught last week's episode of their podcast. I listened to it quite late this time. I only listened to it on Friday, so this was after the NFT game was released. And Brad was talking about this Parasite Eve project, and he sounded so excited about this project. And I was listening to it, obviously with the hindsight of having known what the actual announcement is or was in the end, which was so funny because I think they even joked about it being like a mobile gacha game or something. And then unfortunately, it was even worse than a mobile gacha game as well. So. Yeah, that was funny. So, Pux, do you have a tinfoil hat at the ready by any chance, mate?
Unfortunately, not right now.
No, I want to run a little bit of a conspiracy theory by you. See what your thoughts are. So if you
go for it.
So hear me out. And this isn't my idea, just for the record. I've read this though. So Square Enix was selling their studios. They sold them with Embracer. Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal are obviously helping out Xbox on Perfect Dark and Fable. But obviously Microsoft were a little tied up buying a little publisher known as Activision Blizzard. So I've seen some people suggesting that maybe there's a little bit of a backdoor deal between Microsoft and Embracer going on here, where Microsoft maybe did want to purchase them, but they didn't want to do anything that might hinder the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. So some people have suggested that maybe Embracer, the plan for these studios is to actually just move them on to Microsoft at a later date once the Activision deal has gone through, and then they've got the support studios in house. Embracer can get a return on their investment. Do you think there's any truth to that particular theory? Do you think that's a little bit too crazy?
Wow, who knows? Part of me wants to say, I don't know. I don't even think that lives in the realm of ridiculous. As funny as that sounds, because like worse things have happened when it comes to stuff like this that sometimes turn out to be true, right? So, God, I don't even know. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but at the same time, how else do you try to gather various things together whilst, trying to manhandle this behemoth, which is your Activision deal? So it could well be. It's very hard to answer. I don't really know. It's like a lot of conspiracy. Well, not a lot of them. Some of them just outright sound ridiculous and are easily incorrect. But then there's some like that one where, there's so many if, buts, and maybes, and no one person really knows everything inside out. So it lives within the realms of possibility, but whether or not it's actually the case, man, I don't know.
I think maybe there's
an interesting theory.
Yeah, I think there could be some truth to it in a sense that Microsoft were interested, and the reason that they didn't pursue the acquisition was maybe because they had Activision Blizzard in the works. But as Luke, do you think that would have made any difference if we were sitting here today? Obviously, we've had the discussions around the CMA for the past few weeks now. We'll not touch on the CMA in particular too much, but a lot of it's been around. Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, is that going to impact competition? Would that conversation be different if Microsoft was sitting here today with Eidos, Square Enix Montreal, and Crystal Dynamics in their first party studios as well?
No, I don't think so, because they're not. Look, I mean, they're pretty big studios, but they're not gigantic ones, and they don't have IP that is particularly huge. I mean, Tomb Raider is probably the biggest IP that those, Crystal Dynamics, or Square Enix with Crystal Dynamics held. But that's not it's not a mega franchise like Call of Duty is, or anything like that, or Fortnite, or FIFA, or whatever. It's much lower than that, and in fact, it's probably a franchise than even something like Elder Scrolls, right, at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would have affected anything as far as the CMA is concerned, because they're not too bothered, or seemingly not too bothered about amount of developers. Actually, it's one of the main points is about the ubiquitousness of Call of Duty and how that impacts competition, which just none of that applies to the franchises that those two studios hold. So there might be an optics thing from Microsoft. There could have been, in theory, something where they were like, we would like to get these studios, but optically we know that we're going to be acquiring or trying to acquire Activision Blizzard in the same time period. So do we really want to kind of all those out there in the public while we do that? That doesn't optically look great. Do I think there's a grand conspiracy? I mean, first of all, I should say I really am against conspiracy theories in general. So you'll probably know what my answer is going to be here. But do I think there's some sort of conspiracy for Embracer to hand off these studios to Microsoft? Absolutely not, because that's not how you buy. That's not how you do M&A. You don't do it on the the backdoor handshake understanding that you'll sell them on for a profit. That's not how it works. And certainly for Embracer, what would be the point? Because all you would get out of that deal is you would get, a bunch of great IP, Deus Ex, Tomb Raider. You've got no fucker to develop them, right? Because you've sold the studios that were the stewards of those franchises. So why would you do that? I suspect it's one of two things. It's either, as we discussed, it's either Square Enix made those deals. There wasn't some change of control provision that applied to whatever contracts they made. Thus, the studios were kind of forced, and Embracer were forced to kind of honor that. Or two, Embracer could have gotten out of that deal, in terms of the Crystal Dynamics thing and also the Fable one with Eidos Montreal. But they decided actually, for where they are in their dev cycles, it's probably a good thing if they keep doing that and we get a bunch of money from it. So let's just do it. I don't. Now, one day, could Microsoft buy those studios? Maybe, but I guess that depends on how they perform for Embracer and what Embracer think of them going forward. They don't seem like the type of whole, kind of group entity to really want to sell developers or anything like that. So, and they have no reason to, unlike Square Enix, who were obviously disappointed with their performance. Yeah. And I think, Embracer's expectations in terms of performance will be a lot lower than Square Enix's expectations about sales, etc. So, but no, I don't think there's a grand conspiracy. I just think that's the way it is.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Like I said, I did see that being bandied about a little bit, and I think it does beg the question: is maybe why didn't Microsoft purchase them? Because it wasn't a particularly expensive deal. I think it was like $300 million in the end for 3 studios. One of them being and the IP. One of them was a mobile developer. Microsoft have been particularly keen to highlight, their interest in that market. Phil Spencer's interviews with the likes of Wall Street Journal, and there was another company this past week. He said, this Activision Blizzard deal was about mobile. Now, obviously, King Call of Duty Mobile is far bigger than any of the Go franchise that Square Enix Montreal were working on, but still, it's kind of another developer in that space. And what was a relatively, I say inexpensive in Microsoft terms, obviously, a relatively inexpensive acquisition. So I am a little bit surprised, actually. I was surprised when the Crystal Dynamics announcement came out. I was like, well, why wouldn't Microsoft be interested? And then maybe I thought, maybe it's because Square weren't interested in just selling Crystal Dynamics, and Embracer came along and wanted to buy all 3. But then, okay, we're also paying essentially Embracer now to assist us or to loan us the developers for Fable. It kind of makes less sense now than it ever has as to why Microsoft just didn't acquire the studios. Now, obviously, an acquisition isn't just something that you can do on a whim, or it isn't the easiest process in the world. But considering the state that Microsoft is in when it comes to acquisitions, it just it seems a little unusual, the fact that they're just paying somebody else for development resource rather than just buying it themselves, considering that's kind of what they want to do. So yeah, but as you say, maybe if Perfect Dark turns out to be an absolute hit, maybe Crystal Dynamics is one that Microsoft are interested in, because the initiative is, I think Stubbs put it in the chat earlier. Where was it, Stubbs? Apologies. I think he put something in there about the initiative just being bizarre, and I think that's fair. I think Playground, obviously an established studio, they're building up a second team. Maybe they just needed Eidos Montreal to help them get established, and then they'll continue to build that second team for whatever the follow-up project is. But the initiative is something brand new. They've got also, well, they've reportedly had all kinds of problems with people leaving the team. It's now a much smaller team, so maybe that is something that happens in the future. But yeah, I think it's fair to say there's not Satya isn't in some dark alley with the head of Embracer at the moment, handing over paper envelopes. I don't think, but yeah, and like I say, it just begs a question as to maybe why they didn't when they had the opportunity.
Yeah.
Was there any other topics that you guys wanted to touch on this evening? Anything else this past week?
I think not. Well, it can be a topic, but more than anything, people need to go and find that reveal of Overdose, which is one of Kojima's new games. Not even for the project. Not you may or may not be interested. Like, if you're not interested in it, still go and watch the not reveal, but the leak that happened. I was in work and was having to literally hold like my mouth not to like burst out laughing because I was watching it, because I didn't have any background for what I was about to see, and opened it up, and then there were just multiple layers to that off-screen recording that are just absolutely hilarious. They're just literally one of the funniest leaked reveals I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I could not stop.
There was something very early 2000s about the leak.
Yeah.
I think like the whole cam footage or something.
Cam footage. Yeah. Well, there was someone that was like, I read it somewhere. It was like, if anything, this sounds like a Kojima reveal, like such the absurdity. So like,
I'd be all for that. If this turns out to be a controlled leak that he initiated, I would be all for that, because
it's just everything. It's the recording of a thing on another screen through another thing. It's the reflections that happen on the screen. It's the big reveal at the end of that video.
Did you see this yourself, Pucks?
I haven't seen it, but
it's really good.
Yeah. The thing that would have been the icing on the cake for me is if you couldn't see his face, because I would have just loved, in my mind, that's Norman Reedus recording that footage, recording himself, and I can imagine people like finding clips of Norman like in, I don't know, Walking Dead shirtless and comparing nipples and things like that to see who it is. So it was bizarre. Like I say, there was something really unusual, really early 2000s about like that leak. I remember back in the day watching the first Pokemon movie, which was on cam footage when I was on VHS, and it just had that sort of vibe to it where it just seemed really, really bizarre. But we were talking about in the chat, Luke, and like, what the hell is this project? Because we see Death Stranding 2 is being worked on. He's announced a project with Microsoft. There's Overdose, which has come out, which the footage was seemingly on a phone as well. Like, obviously it was recorded on a phone, but it was also of a phone. And then obviously, for those who hadn't seen it, Kojima also did an interview with Jeff on his Spotify podcast, which he announced during Summer Games Fest, I believe, where he talked about things like Abandoned, and saying how he was receiving like deep fakes of like Kojima working on Abandoned. Then the Abandoned Twitter account tweeted about it, which I thought was amazing. So there's a lot of Kojima news. But what do you think this project is, guys? Do you think this is the Microsoft project? Do you think it's Kojima's just full of busy and he's got 3 projects on the go at the moment?
I don't know. I don't think it's the Microsoft project. It just doesn't strike me as a thing that Microsoft would be like, yeah, that's what we want Kojima to make. You know, that's what we want to bring him in for.
Yeah.
As you say, part of that is the mobile element, which could lend itself to being the Microsoft project, as we know that's a cloud-based, project. So you technically could play it anywhere. But I don't see, like, I don't know. Microsoft don't seem to really like horror games, do they? You know what I mean? Like they've never really struck me as particularly interested in them.
What horror games? I mean, I don't know. They obviously had the likes of Condemned, which was exclusive.
They did. Yeah,
the Medium was timed exclusive. Whether you want to consider that a horror game or not is obviously another matter. But you're right. It's not something that they've typically jumped into too much. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if anything, it also just seems like it's probably a little bit too further along based on the timeline of like the announcement. Unless it's something that he's been working on for some time and Microsoft has snapped it up a bit later in development. But I kind of got a feeling that it was something sort of brand new. And Kojima reportedly had this Stadia project, which obviously would have been a cloud game, and that was reportedly cancelled. Maybe it's that. Maybe it never. Maybe we never see this game ever again. Beyond these leaks, you know. And
I mean I mean the feeling that I got from the footage was that what was being shown was like just a proof of concept.
Yeah,
it didn't look like it looked really rough and kind of odd. It was kind of like this is kind of the feel we're going for, and you can see that by just like the character model. The character model's Margaret Qualley, who was in Death Stranding. It's her character model, like it's the same one, just with a dress.
Yeah,
which suggests it suggests even more that it's a proof of concept because it was just something they could spin up really quickly to show, to kind of pitch. So I think this may be whatever he was working on with Google. But as you say, we don't know that that's the project that he's now working on with Microsoft. This may be something that he, had funding for, or self-funded, and it's just a mobile project, like a third smaller project.
Yeah.
That he wants to do, and then he's got Death Stranding 2, which is probably the biggest thing that he's got going on at the minute, and then down the line is the Xbox project, because the Xbox project, especially when he announced that sounded like it was super early.
Yeah,
like it was very early days for that. So I don't think it would be this either. So there's a lot of like kind of speculation, but I just don't feel like whatever this is, it's related to Microsoft or Sony for that matter. It's like a Kojima published game.
I think that's fair. And I kind of got a sense of a grander scale with the Xbox announcement. Now, obviously, that was just the announcement, but there was nothing in there where, and I appreciate obviously it was always going to be difficult to get across what the game is in that footage. But in the footage, there was nothing that seemed sort of out of this world, like groundbreaking or anything. And I get the sense that he is truly going for something fairly groundbreaking with what he's doing with Xbox. Whether it turns out to be obviously is another matter. But if anyone hasn't seen the footage, then please go watch it, just for the comedy value alone. And Pux, I know you've not seen it, I know you've heard it, but it's 2.5 minutes that well worth your time. Mate, please watch it.
I'll try and find it shortly out later tonight then.
Yeah. I guess on that point then, a question, same question for you both, just to wrap up the show, is when do we see Kojima's next project? Has Keighley got it for the TGAs?
Yeah, it's got to be, hasn't it? He's got to bring something. Surely it's his next project.
You in agreement, Pux?
Yeah, it has to be. Well, where else would it be shown off?
Yeah.
That's and Kojima's also been doing those. I don't know if people have seen those teasers and reveals on Twitter.
What is that? That's the "Who Am I" thing, and
so
that started a while back, a couple of weeks back.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of them, 2 so far, which have been, as you say, like "Who am I" and that sort of stuff against a person against a backdrop, pretty dark, you can't see them, and then he's revealed who they are. So it's actually some actors that are going to be in his next project. So some pretty big ones as well. Ellie Fanning was the first one. I can't remember who the second one was, but I remember that she played Yukio in Deadpool. So like he's teasing kind of I think the next project reveal or whatever that they're related to is pretty close, I would think. So, yeah, I get the feeling that once he's done with these, and I think he just did a new teaser recently, which might have been like a reference to when, rather than who, which suggests again he's getting ready to show off something. And I think that, from the looks of it, I think that's probably Death Stranding too. Based on the pedigree of actor that he's been using and where we think his projects are, I think that would be Death Stranding too. And I think that would, it has to be TGA, doesn't it?
It's interesting.
It would be shocking if it wasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Death Stranding too, though, because I kind of got the vibe from these teasers, whatever you want to call them. I was kind of thinking this isn't Death Stranding 2. I kind of got the vibe that it was maybe something completely different. I
don't know.
I could be wrong. It seems like a strange way to reveal a sequel. If you know what I mean. It kind of like just the vibe I got from the teasers just was a different vibe to Death Stranding. So
I don't know, because some of the imagery that he's been using on some of these reveals has been like Strand based.
Okay, fair enough.
Strand imagery. So it just feels like it's Kojima saying this is the next game, and I think. I'm not going to spoil Death Stranding, but like there are places you can go which would suggest the cast he's got, like who those might be. So along with Reedus, obviously, he will definitely be in the next one. I think obviously if we see Reedus in one of these teasers, then we know it's definitely Death Stranding. And if we don't, I'm sure we'll find out pretty soon anyway, because I think it will be at the TGA. So
yeah. Well, not too long. We've got about a month and a week, 5 to 6 weeks. Not an awful lot of time to go. And Keedy has been teasing the TGAs. I shouldn't say the TGAs. I should just say TGAs. Oh, the Game Awards. Yeah, the Game Awards. He's been teasing them a little bit, talking about how the team's working hard on it. So I'm excited to see. I think we should hopefully be in for a good show, and that's come from someone who wasn't particularly impressed by sort of the Summer Games Fest or Gamescom this year, but I think the Game Awards could be pretty big this year. Yeah. Personally, I think Xbox will bring a couple of projects as well. So, I think with that, gents, we'll maybe wrap up the show for this evening. I also just want to say thank you to everybody who stopped by in chat. We had Gogglepaw and It's Timid drop by a little bit earlier. So you guys in chat, thank you very much for joining everyone. Appreciate everyone else who I think we call it everyone else earlier on in the show as well. Thank you all for dropping by. I'll use this as another opportunity just to say, if you wouldn't mind, please like, share, and subscribe. That would be wonderful. Again, apologies for any technical issues earlier in the show. Not the smoothest start to proceedings for us today. So, but Pux, hopefully you've enjoyed the show, mate. Thank you very much for stopping by.
No, definitely. Thank you very much. I always enjoy talking games with you guys and the rest of the community. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, and yeah, looking forward to the next one. God of War special, maybe. I don't know. Yeah,
exactly. Well, we'll have to see, because I guess it'll depend on whether you guys can peel yourself away from your TV for a couple of hours next Sunday evening. We'll see, but hopefully we'll be back next Sunday. It's been good to be a little bit more consistent these past few weeks. This new slot seems to be doing quite well. So, but also, Luke, thank you very much, mate. Appreciate you coming on. Hopefully you enjoy the show, mate.
Oh yeah, absolutely, as usual. And we will. We'll talk about it. We'll pry ourselves away from Ragnarok for next week's show, I think, because we'll have to talk about it. But we'll also not really talk about it because we can't really say or don't want to say much about it spoiler wise. But yeah, we'll have to touch on it, I think.
Yeah, you guys can maybe do maybe get someone like BMG on and maybe do like a spoiler cast show type thing, maybe shortly after release as well. That's always the thing, isn't it? Like, I remember speaking about Plague Tale Requiem a few weeks ago, and I was just desperate to talk about particularly the last 5 chapters. But really conscious of the fact that people haven't quite got there just yet. So it's always a balance, isn't it? So, but yeah, we will try to keep that conversation as spoiler free as we can. So but I think on that note, everyone, again, appreciate everyone for stopping by. Like I say, we should be back next Sunday. Keep an eye on the socials. Also, just a little plug for our Discord. Twitter's been weird this past week, shall we say, with the takeover from one Mr. Musk, and I know a lot of people are considering whether they even want to use the platform anymore. So please do remember we've got a Discord, so jump in there if you do want to keep in touch, if you are considering maybe taking a break from Twitter. But other than that, thank you all very much for joining, and we'll see you all next week.